The excitement is due not only to the great matchup, but due to one Karsten Charles Sabathia. He prefers to be called CC. Since he stands about 6'7", weighs about 240 pounds, we'll call him anything that he wants to be called. He's a big left-handed pitcher, and he also happens to be the first-round draft pick of the Cleveland Indians. He will make his professional debut right here tonight in this ball game.
So how did a 40-year-old broadcaster in his first season of baseball play-by-play wind up calling the first professional game of a pitcher who would wind up compiling an illustrious Hall of Fame-worthy career? Well, if you have a few minutes, I'll tell you what I remember about a few crazy months in 1998 in Burlington, North Carolina. Hi, I'm Larry Blucher, as you can probably tell. Actually, I'm the old version of Larry. Back in 1998, I was the middle-aged version of Larry. I'd been in broadcasting for more than a dozen years, mostly as a sports reporter and anchor, but I had not done the one thing that I really wanted to do, and that was baseball play-by-play. I decided to go for it. I didn't have a fresh audition tape, so I jumped on a plane, flew out to Phoenix, and went to some Arizona Fall League games. I climbed up in the stands and talked to myself. Actually, I talked into my cassette recorder and described the action, much to the dismay of the people in the stands around me. But despite the glares and stares, I came away with a workable tape, shopped it around, got the attention of the Burlington Indians who hired me, and the adventure was on. I arrived at Burlington Athletic Stadium on May 1st. It had originally been built in Danville, Virginia, but in 1959, it was completely dismantled. The pieces loaded up and driven to Burlington, North Carolina, and reconstructed in a residential neighborhood in time for the 1960 season. I climbed up on top of the ballpark, located my new home away from home, the broadcast booth, way above the field, but a great bird's eye view, better than most of the ballparks in the Appy League. I met my new and much younger co-workers, Assistant Manager Brian Garudo on the left, Director of Sales Lisa LaRosa, and way in the back is General Manager Mike Edwards. In his early 20s, Mike was the youngest general manager in professional baseball. He had told me they'd have a cut-rate apartment lined up for me. That didn't happen, so my first workday in Burlington was spent searching for affordable lodging, tough considering my puny paycheck. I finally located this nice little house about 7 miles from the ballpark where a lady had a room for rent with a comfortable bed and a cable TV. Wasn't cheap, but was clean and quiet. Wouldn't spend much time there once the season began, as 15, 16-hour days are the norm for home games in minor league baseball. The actual games wouldn't begin until mid-June, so I spent most of the month doing such glamorous jobs as weeding the picnic area, cleaning ballpark restrooms, answering phones, selling merchandise, delivering pocket schedules, writing and recording radio spots, and learned how to pull the tarp. Backbreaking when you only have half a dozen people doing it, but I was having a blast. Finally, the players and coaches reported, and it was time to do what I came to do, broadcast baseball. The manager of the ball club was Joe Mikulik, a Texan in his mid-30s who had spent about a dozen years in the minors as a really good hitter, had coached a couple years, and this was his first full season as a manager. He wasn't thrilled initially about being interviewed, but he realized it came with the territory and became fairly comfortable with it.
On the field, it doesn't look bad cosmetically, but when you walk on it, it's a matter of stepping on what looks to be dry dirt, and then you get to that mud underneath. Right, that's what it looks like right now. It's really, in few spots, it's hard to plant and go the other direction. That's what I'm concerned about. And also making turns around bases, I'm concerned about that. And if you can't do that, it's very difficult to play. So we'll see.
And especially with your team being a running team.
Exactly. I mean, I'd like to have a pretty decent surface to run on. And if I don't, then we may have a problem here shortly. Let's reflect back real quick on last night. First inning, first game, they got a runner on third base, one out. You bring the infield in. Bautista gets the ground ball. Historias comes up with it. Would have been a close play at the plate. Can you tell us about that? Well, I think, Historias has been doing a good job for us all year, so far this year. And just made a poor decision on throwing the ball to first base. And it just comes with a lot of playing time, knowing, situations. And it's one of the reasons why we played the infield in for the play at the plate, but he just made the decision to go to first. But that happens when at this level. He learned from it. We talked to him about it, and hopefully it's not going to happen again.
pitching coach was a former Major League reliever named Carl Willis, who had pitched in the 1991 World Series for the Minnesota Twins. He was in his late 20s, just starting what would turn out to be a long and very successful coaching career, and he, like Mick, was quite a character. We shared a love of the old TV show Dark Shadows, and he was also very helpful to me in my role as broadcaster. We had a lot of fun in our interviews.
I'm sure that Donnie Settles probably would have liked to have worked another inning last night, maybe gone farther into the game. He was pitching quite well, but it was a case where he had a certain pitch count, and you had to come out and kind of get the bad guy.
well, that's right. I tried to explain to him. I said, look, you went 4 innings, 2 hits, no runs. I said, no one's going to say anything to you. I'm the guy that's going to take the heat for taking you out. But, with these guys just getting started, certainly we're trying to stay away from injuries, and we don't want to push them too much. And I'm sure that Donnie, certainly he's been probably close to 100 pitches in college games. But with the time off and with this time of trying to evaluate and putting them in positions that they can succeed later on down the road. Now, next time out, he'll be able to stretch it out to around 80 to 85 pitches. And for the new pitchers, the guys who are in their first season, that's going to be it for them. They won't be allowed to go, any more than 85 pitches. They won't be out more than 100 pitches. And that's for their own benefit, to let them get the experience of pitching, but also to stay away from injuries and allow them to progress down the road.
And that's a good thing to stress to the fans, so they're not going to boo you every time you go out to the
Well, I expect that to happen occasionally, but it really, we're trying, and as I told Donnie, wins are important, and I would have loved for him to go out and pitch the 5th inning and got the win. And while those wins in Burlington were important at the time, they're not going to look back, and Donnie Suttles, if he's in Cleveland 5 years from now, he's not going to remember that I took him out of his first game and he didn't get a win.
The batting coach was veteran Jack Moll, very nice gentleman, mid-50s, very quiet, very professional. And the ball players, it was an interesting group of young men and kids. About 3 dozen arrived, all making about $850 a month, and all were placed 3 and 4 to a room at an old motor lodge. But at least they had hot water, a luxury some of the many Latino players weren't even used to. It was a learning experience for all of us, especially the road trips. Our trainer, David Lassiter, was an interesting character. Late 20s, not exactly the prototypical build for a professional trainer. Came off as a bit of a foul-mouthed, rude guy, but once we got to know each other, he was also extremely helpful to me. Liked him. On our first bus trip, I heard this odd noise coming from up front. I thought it was engine trouble, and it was actually our trainer, David Lassiter, snoring. The coaches and I all got tickled about it. David would actually take a swig from his water bottle, and before he could put it back in his lap, he'd be back snoring again. I mean, the guy would snore in mid-sentence. And Carl Willis would ask him, how can you do that? And David would say, well, I got out what I needed to say. Carl had this real dry sense of humor, and he responded, well, it'd be nice if you would stay awake long enough for me to at least answer you. I spent a lot of time on the long bus rides chatting with outfielder Dennis Malave, son of former major leaguer Cesar Tovar. Denny was one of several players from Venezuela, most of whom spoke little or no English. Malave was learning the language, so I'd teach him some English, and he would teach me some Espanol. I'd point at my feet and say, shoes, and he would reply, zapatos. And Denny had some fleet feet.
1 out, and good speed on the bases. Malave at second, Esquerra at first, and the batter is Paul Day. First offering is swung on and lined to the right field for a base hit. Malave coming around third base. Sabathia comes up with the ball. Malave will score. Esquerra into third base and sliding into second with a double is Paul Day. The Indians have tied the ball game. With Dennis Malave. Malave has not been retired tonight. 3 base hits, 2 bases on balls. Throw to first base and diving back in safely at the Stories. 2-0 offering is swung straight back. That's the closest one I've had tonight. Got back here in a hurry, and the count goes to 2-1. Got my first souvenir of the season on that previous foul ball by Dennis. Got my headphones back on straight now. I'm ready to go. Malave's ready to go. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Here's the offering runner going. Swung on the hit and run, rose to perfection as it grounds into right field for a base hit. It's bobbled in right field. The Stories being way pulled. Here comes the throw. Not in time as the Stories winning run. The Indians win in 10 innings, 6-5.
Meanwhile, pitcher Martin Bautista, whose real name was Martin Vargas, who was told he was using a different name due to some visa issues, was from the Dominican Republic and was also trying to learn English. Unfortunately, his instructors were his English-speaking teammates. Martin was a hard thrower, very good pitcher, very funny guy. I was on the bus, I hear some of his teammates teaching him how to order food from a restaurant in English, supposedly. I hear Martin saying, "Hello, you stupid bitch. Get me some food, you ugly whore, you ugly whore." I told Malave, if you don't want to get your ass kicked by some rednecks, keep learning your English from me. Another Venezuelan, 17-year-old Maicer Estores, struggled with his English but was drawing praise for his slick fielding at shortstop. And he was a decent hitter. I had the pleasure of calling his first professional homer on July 20th.
Estores batting .262 this season. No home runs, 12 runs batted in. Completing the defensive alignment for Pulaski, Harrison left, right and center. You know when they do that. And Castillo in right. First offering to Estores is hit well in the air to right field, tracking it back to the warning track, and that ball's going to get out of here. Estores with his first home run of the season. Thought he had gotten a little bit under it, but it continued to carry. The wind is blowing out to right field, and it may have helped a little bit as Estores gets his first round tripper of the year to put the Indians out in front, and the whole team storms out of the dugout to greet Estores, who has a grin from ear to ear.
Stu was taking English classes and surprised me a couple days after his homer by politely asking me in English for a copy of that tape, which I was quite honored to do. A few days later, I almost got to call my first no-hitter courtesy of Indians pitcher Matt White. Confident young lefty who had recently been demoted, White remained professional, stayed positive. Against the Bluefield Orioles, only a missed call by the home plate umpire cost White and reliever Eric Molesky a combined no-hitter. As August rolled around, the Indians were playing .500 ball and were very much in the playoff picture. Not much offensive pop, but great speed on the bases. They had an outfielder with world-class speed named Eric Thompson, who only wound up batting .211 with 10 stolen bases, but Eric could have hit .500 and stolen 50 if he had bunted every at-bat. And the Tribe had an excellent starting rotation, one that figured to get even stronger with the addition of a new pitcher, CC Sabathia, a towering, hard-throwing left-hander who had been drafted in the first round by the Cleveland Indians, signed for $1.3 million, and was assigned to make his professional debut in Burlington.
A lot of excitement concerning this one, and pitching coach Carl Willis is joining us. I suppose a lot of excitement for you as well, being a coach for a first-round pick who's making his pro debut. Well, it is. You know, we're all excited to see CC get out on the mound, and he's excited as well. And, you know, it's an honor for me, and, you know, you take pride in the fact that the organization feels you're responsible enough and going to do a good job. I mean, it's something that's a big responsibility. You know, barring injuries, sky is probably the limit on this guy. I mean, he's a left-hander, and you think of left-handers, you think of the old term crafty lefty with the off-speed stuff, but this guy throws hard, doesn't he? Yeah, Larry, he's a power pitcher. He has a power fastball and a power breaking ball, which is really, I know for me, you know, I was really surprised at seeing that. You know, we've had him on the gun out here, you know, 94 to 96 miles per hour.
CeCe's mom had called the front office prior to the game wanting to know if there was any way she could listen to the broadcast. And this was before teams were broadcasting on the internet. I suggested she could call, be put on hold, and what she would hear would be the feed from the radio station. Now, keep in mind, this was when long-distance rates still applied. She was calling from California, so a 1-hour coast-to-coast phone call was not cheap by any means. But, you know, I suppose when it comes to wanting to listen to your son make his professional baseball debut, cost becomes secondary. Very nice lady. Hope I described the action well enough for her.
Regardless of how he is doing, whether it's bad, whether it's good, 50 pitches, no more for the big, tall left-hander who has just completed his warm-up tosses and is getting ready to throw his first pitch as a professional against Joshua Taylor, the second baseman of the Kingsport Mets. Taylor batting .290 this season, no homers, and a couple of runs batted in. And a lot of people excited to see this pitch. I tell you, I am, so much that I'm even holding a camera here. When Sabathia throws this first pitch, I'm going to snap it. Want this one recorded. Like I said, if there's 1,000 people here tonight, there'll be about 10,000 people down the road telling you that they saw this very pitch from the left-hander. His first pitch is swung on and fouled straight back to the screen for strike one. So a good start for CC Sabathia to his professional career. A fastball that Taylor just does get a piece of and fouls straight back for strike one. The left-hander rocks and fires. Fastball right down the pipe for a called strike. Behind Sabathia, it's Batista at first, Centile at second, Astores at short, and Day at third base. Here's the 0-2 offering now. Swing and a miss, and the ball rolls past to Pippo, who comes up with it, throws down to first base, and guns out Taylor, who took a while to get out of the box. And so the first strikeout victim of Sabathia's professional career to his first batter. He fans Taylor, who was subsequently retired 2-3, but it still goes down as a strikeout.
It was great for Indians fans that CC made his debut at home. The Appy League was not too harsh in terms of travel. The longest ride was about 4.5 hours to Kingsport, Tennessee, where the Mets played at Hunter Wright Stadium. Nice scenery, and most importantly to a broadcaster, an air-conditioned press box, where Boyd Coffey, the Indians farm director and a truly nice man, once helped me fill a half-hour rain delay on the air. Sadly, Boyd passed away in 2006. Great guy. The Cardinals played their home games at Howard Johnson Field in Johnson City, Tennessee. Nice park, sadly very few fans. Notice in front of the right field fence, that is a very steep hill, providing a nightmare for outfielders. But Johnson City itself was a lot of fun. Honestly, not much to tell you as far as wild nights on the road. I was married at the time. Coaches were all married. For us, a wild night was grabbing a few six-packs, going back to mixed room, watching wrestling or baseball, and laughing our fool heads off. There was one night, however, in Johnson City. Carl Willis knew this sports bar. Yeah, we went, and it was really nice. They had pool tables and foosball. And if you know competitive Carl, be sure to ask him the results of those games. Yeah. And they have great food, and they also had amazing scenery. There were petite little 5-foot-tall, athletically built, gorgeous blondes wall to wall. Turns out there was some sort of a cheerleading competition going on in town. I looked at Carl and said, "This is the Bowen Field of sports bars. Best scenery ever." If that had been an every night thing, I would probably still be in Johnson City. Elizabethton, Tennessee had Joe O'Brien Field, home of the Twins. Whitewater bubbled in a river running no more than 100 yards from third base. The Braves, managed by former big leaguer Franklin Stubbs, played at Danville, Virginia's Dan Daniel Park and featured star player Rafael Furcal. They claimed top attendance in the Appy League, which was odd since we always saw mostly empty seats there. The White Sox played at DeVault Stadium in Bristol, Virginia, which featured a 3-tiered fence in right field. As a broadcaster, I liked it. Decent view from the press box, which was important, but I got really sick in Bristol, had an awful cough and cold, and was losing my voice. We had to check out of our hotel rooms at noon that day, and the bus didn't leave until 4:15, and I was feeling awful. I killed about an hour in a restaurant and spent the next 3 hours in the stifling heat sitting under a tree reading a book. Pitcher Brian Jackson was walking past, and I complained to him about how crappy I was feeling. Heck of a nice kid. I interviewed him at the ballpark later in the day prior to the game. He had pitched a near no-hitter the previous day, and during the interview, he revealed how his grandmother had passed away earlier in the week, just shortly after his dad had passed away. And despite all that, the guy was out there playing and playing well. I stopped complaining about my cough. The Rangers played at Pulaski's Calfee Park in Virginia, another place with a tough right field. The white part of that wall is cement. Balls ricocheted back as fast as they got there. Field was okay, the facilities were awful. In Martinsville, Virginia, there was Hooker Field, home of the prostitutes. Just kidding, the Phillies played there. Hooker was kind of a drab, boring facility. That was a commuter trip from Burlington, which meant driving 80-85 minutes, playing a game, getting right back on the bus, and returning home late at night. Those were tough. The Orioles played at Bowen Field in Virginia on the West Virginia line. A batter could literally knock a home run out of Virginia into West Virginia. It was at the base of a mountain, featured the most picturesque view in baseball. That was the good news. It was not good for visiting broadcasters. You can see me in the broadcast booth, which was located way down the third baseline. See the big pole that the players are walking past? Yeah, here's the view looking out of the booth. As long as the ball wasn't hit to shortstop or center field, it was fine. And my award for worst place from which to broadcast in the Appy League goes to, drumroll please, Princeton, West Virginia's Honeycutt Field, home of the Devil Rays and the local high school team. Yee doggies. First night there, they had me set up at a wobbly little table behind home plate in the crowd. I tried to describe the action with people walking back and forth in front of me. That was a lot of fun. The next night, though, it got worse. It had been raining, so they moved me back to their tiny little press box. Most press boxes, they have signs that say cheering is not allowed. No, not at Honeycutt Field. Cheering and being loud and obnoxious was apparently encouraged there. It was just a nightmare broadcast. Don't think I even bothered listening to that tape. I might look happy here in the Princeton press box, but I was not. The press box was louder than a bathroom at a bean festival. PA announcer screamed at the top of her lungs, which made broadcasting 6 feet away from her a nightmare. Here they've made major upgrades to the facility. It sure could not have been downgraded. Meanwhile, back home at Burlington, I organized an old-timers game. Still proud of what I put together there. I was able to get Alvin Dark to come out and manage one squad and Clyde King the other. That's Clyde behind former big league pitcher Sonny Dixon waving to the camera. We had former Red Sox shortstop Don Budden, pitchers John Bassart, Dooley Womack, Billy Odell, outfielder Floyd Wicker. A very successful and fun event. The most fun I had all summer came, ironically, in Princeton. Carl and Joe not only loved baseball and pro wrestling, but were NASCAR fans. Mick spotted a little go-kart track, so Fred, our bus driver, drove all the coaches, trainer Dave Lassiter, and me to this track, which was closed when we arrived. But Mick paid the proprietor a couple $100 to open it up to us for an hour. It was an oval track with NASCAR-type mini cars which hauled butt, and we had a blast. There were no bumping signs all over, but we were all so competitive. Mick slammed into Lassiter's car, incredibly lifting the big guy up on 2 wheels onto the railing. I thought that we would all be ejected at that point, but the track guys loved it, so that just encouraged us to swap more paint. Thanks, Mick. That was great fun and a huge stress reliever, which we needed because the Indians really faded down the stretch, dropping to 4th place. But the 31-36 record didn't seem to bother the staff, who reminded me that wins and losses are not the most important thing in rookie ball.
Larry, I always try to look at the positives, and one thing that we were able to accomplish here is everybody got an acceptable amount of work. Certainly, the starters got their innings in. We were very fortunate this year. We won't have a pitcher miss a start this year, and so really fortunate that we stayed healthy this season, which is something that can be a problem at this level. So we did that.
Good outlook over the whole season. I was very excited coming in, with the young talent that we had, just letting them play, letting them have fun, and letting them get their feet wet and letting them learn what professional baseball is all about. I think it went well. I think a lot of guys have gotten better. Regardless of the wins and losses, you've got to look at development. I think we've done that. Guys understand, why they're here and most important, what their purpose is and where they're headed. And I think that's the main thing we've got across. And I think the guys got a lot out of it. Start with our shortstop, Masiri Sturi. Here's a kid that we got like 2 weeks before the 3 weeks before the extended program started, and we were kind of leery about him facing some college pitchers, but we knew he could play defense. And man, when I got here and I saw him play and put him in the number 2 hole, and he handled it great, and he's ran with it ever since.
As for me, I now had a full season of baseball play-by-play experience under my belt and a fresh new audition tape to shop around. I'd learned a lot about baseball and had a summer of wonderful thrills and memories, including calling the first professional pitch of CC Sabathia's professional career. He would go on to have a fantastic career. If there's not a spot reserved for CC in the Hall of Fame, they might as well tear down the Hall of Fame. Definitely a Hall of Fame-worthy career. Oh, my career? Well, I made headlines at my next stop for broadcasting a game from a restroom. But that's another story for another day. Thanks for watching.